Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharma swarupine avatara varisthaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. So today we will be discussing about the great master, the second chapter of Sadhak Bhava. Sadhak Bhava means the avatar as a spiritual aspirant. This is something unique in the biography of Sri Ramakrishna. Unlike all other incarnations or prophets of the past, where only that part of his life, childhood, has been described. We see also in many of the incarnations their role as gurus or maybe as avatars or prophets who guided the destinies of so many people has been described in great detail. But when you come to the sadhana portion, or as a spiritual aspirant, though all of them practice spiritual austerities, a little is known about what Buddha did, but focus is more on what he did after nirvana. So how much of struggle did he undergo? How long did he struggle? What did he do when he struggled for achieving that nirvana? Has been somehow not clearly described in their biographies. If even in the biography of Jesus Christ, they say he went on the mountains and did a lot of austerity. But what exactly did he do? When he came back transformed, we know what he did. He blessed many people, he guided many people as a guru, as a prophet, as a teacher. But we very often, maybe the biographers felt that if we describe the life of someone whom we consider to be an avatara or a prophet, then if we show certain human limitations, and then the faith or devotion that people have for that incarnation will be reduced, or it will become less, because they would not like to ascribe any human imperfections in their teacher, in their prophet, or even in their guru. That is one thing which most of the biographies, even Chaitanya Deva's biography, if you see, they don't describe, though there is a lot of information or strange incidents which are mentioned here and there. Maybe they themselves referred to their own struggles. But as time passed, the disciples thought, how can we attribute all these human imperfections to our prophet or to the avatara whom we believe as our Ishta? He has to be perfect. But Swami Shardananji disagrees. As we discussed in our previous class, he says incarnation comes down voluntarily accepting the human aspects. Of course, there is one divine aspect which makes him stand out, and by the virtue of which we can aspire for his grace. We can aspire for an avatara's grace. That is one aspect of his personality, that we depend on him. He is our Ishta, he is the avatar, he is the prophet, he is the savior, whatever name we may attribute to him. We go to him to seek something which we cannot achieve by the help of our own sadhana. So we want him to be a savior, we want him to be somebody who bestows his grace. That's all. We are not bothered about trying to do what he did in his own life. As Sri Ramakrishna himself said, I have done 16 annas, that is 1 rupee was made of 16 annas, but you do at least 1 anna, that will be more than enough. So he gives us the assurance. He doesn't expect you to imitate him or do what he did, but definitely expects you to do something. He may have opened the door for you. You might just knock and it will be opened, or maybe you have to push. The keys may be the door may not be locked. He might have opened the keys, as Holy Mother once said, that she said Thakur has opened the key to realization, opened the door to realization. He has turned the keys, but at least we have to push. So that is what Swami Shardanand expects of devotees of Sri Ramakrishna or admirers. When they approach Sri Ramakrishna, he said, we want to discuss the spiritual Sri Ramakrishna as a spiritual aspirant. And he has devoted, as I said, one whole volume to that. Out of the 5 volumes we saw, first describes his childhood in great detail. There are many divine aspects, but there are some human aspects in childhood as well. He had his own fancies, he had his own ideas, which many people did not agree with. He was seen to be rather peculiar because he shunned education right from childhood. He was not in favor of going to school, and he could tell his parents that what will I gain by studying in the school? Will that learning help me to realize God? If it cannot do, then what's the use of such education? So we see that in the childhood also, Swami Shardanand has described, though he has described in many places some of the divine visions he had even as a small child. Apart from that, there is a human aspect which we fail to understand. That is why it is very important to study the human aspect of an avatara or a prophet or a world teacher if we want to really benefit from his teachings and his life. Unless we study in depth the life of an incarnation, especially a biography of the standard of Swami Shardanandji's biography. This is supposed to be a very, very important biography without which we cannot aspire to even say that Sri Ramakrishna is an incarnation, as it happened in the case of Girish. One day he was loudly shouting and telling everybody, he was a man of tremendous faith. So he was telling everyone and anyone and everyone that Sri Ramakrishna is incarnation. In those days, of course, many people with Western education did not believe. Even Narendra in initial stages would not believe that. But when Girish Ghosh started preaching because of his faith, no doubt he had faith. But then once Sri Ramakrishna admonished him, he said, you are just going on shouting that I am an incarnation. What do you understand of incarnation? Because he knew that he understands very little. Just because he has faith in me, he is saying and is preaching everywhere that I'm an incarnation. To know an incarnation, you have to have some knowledge of what an incarnation is, some knowledge of his life, a detailed analysis of his life, as Swami Shardanandji did. And when he wrote this, one of the disciples, monks, once asked him, said, if that is the case, then how can one write a biography? Does that mean that all the experiences that you have mentioned here in this biography of the master of Sri Ramakrishna, you have experienced? And then suddenly Swami Shardanandji became very grave. And he just said yes. So that means he had to not only visualize the situation, visualize the different incidents which took place, whether it was heard from others or many of the incidents, he says, we ourselves heard from the master. But not only that, he had to meditate on him so much. It was not very easy to write this biography. It's not an academic work. Some facts put together. That is what most of the biographies are. We do not understand the personality whom we write about. He has to experience these states himself. So you can imagine what a big task Swami Shardanandji undertook. And after that, he was never questioned. Because he said yes. Because all the experiences that are described in the great master, Sri Ramakrishna, the great master, are the highest experiences, which is a result of intense sadhana. So it's not that he collected information from Hridaya and Holy Mother and some other people, put them together in the form of a book, like all the modern day biographers do. Most of the biographies do not require of the biographer to assimilate, understand, and also practice the uh, what Sri Ramakrishna or what the prophet has practiced in his own life. The teacher has practiced in his own life. So he says, that's why he's making it very clear that I am discussing Sri Ramakrishna's life, especially his life as a spiritual aspirant, which is in Bengali is known as sadhak bhav. So that sadhakas who even want to do some sadhana need to have this knowledge to even begin their sadhana. So it's a essential requirement to read this book, assimilate it, at least intellectually. Of course, Sardananji could assimilate all his teachings, all the incidents and all the states of mind, the different state of consciousness Sri Ramakrishna demonstrated in his own life, and then he wrote a biography. The least we can do is at least read what he has written. We don't even read. We don't read. We say Ramakrishna is our Ishta Devata. It's like Girish saying that, oh, Sri Ramakrishna is Avatara. Thakur scolded him. What do you know of an Avatara? What have you realized? Just because you say, why should people accept it? What understanding do you have? So this was the authority with which Swami Shardananji wrote this biography, not out of ego or anything, because Swamiji told him. He wrote it because he was aware of many of the biographies that were published before this. Before he wrote the biography, there were at least 3 biographies in Bengali. One was Gurudas Burman. There were some other biographers who just wrote like anybody would write biographies. If you find even a life of Mahatma Gandhi or any other great person, there are hundreds of biographers. Each one has his own view. Everybody seems to be in a hurry to write a biography. So also the same thing happened, like Girish Ghosh. Even Keshav Chandra Sen wanted to write something in his Daily Mirror, which he used to edit. So Sri Ramakrishna warned him. He said, you don't do that. If whatever is within here, whatever is inside here, decides to manifest itself, that will preach itself. You don't have to be an instrument, especially if you are not a proper instrument. You may end up writing something which is not authentic. And that's what happened when Ramchandra Datta and some others were great devotees, no doubt they were great devotees, but still they had a biased or a one-sided view or an incomplete view of their own master, and they started writing, and maybe to dispel some of the doubts that were created in the minds of readers, Swami Shardananji decided that I should attempt this biography, and of course with the grace or with the blessings of Holy Mother Sri Sharda Devi, he dared to take upon this task and start writing a biography. He clearly says, because when he finished his 4 volumes and the 5th volume was incomplete and Holy Mother passed away. So some of the disciples said, your 5th volume is incomplete. Why don't you complete it? It still remains incomplete. Of course, there are incidents, some appendix, some has been added in that biography in the Great Master, but it's an incomplete biography because he said once after the passing away of Holy Mother, he says, all the power has been withdrawn and I'm not in a position to write. Even if I want to, I cannot write. So that was what Swami Shardananji said. So definitely he was blessed by Holy Mother Sri Sharda Devi, and he undertook the task of writing this biography. So he is giving a very clear account of why the human and divine aspects coexists in all great teachers, not only Sri Ramakrishna, but he says all the great teachers, prophets, and in previous incarnations, the human and divine aspects always coexisted. But as time passed, the disciples, in their enthusiasm to preach their Ishta or the Avatara whom they believed in, slowly, he says, tried to emphasize more on the divine aspect, because they did not want the human aspect to be highlighted, lest people lose faith. But Swami Shardanji says it's exactly opposite, because the Avatara has come and assumed the human deficiencies or aspects just to show us how a spiritual aspirant can do his sadhana. If that is not the case, then if he is purely divine, then we cannot imitate him. With all our human limitations, we can't do sadhana. So to inspire people to do sadhana, their incarnations themselves you can see in the incarnations, the human aspect coexist with the divine aspect. So, but still, he says, how did he understand all these things? That the divine aspect coincides, coexists with the human aspects. And some of the human aspects which Sri Ramakrishna himself told Swami Shardananda, he says, blessed by the gracious company of the Holy Master, that is Sri Ramakrishna, we contemplate his life and character. The more we do so, the more we are overwhelmed by the wonderful coexistence of divine and human characteristics in him. Without seeing him, we could never have understood how it was possible for such contrary aspects to coexist harmoniously in one person. Because all the biographies normally people read or which are available are written by people who are followers or who are maybe admirers or who are great devotees of that incarnation or that world teacher. So naturally, they just focus on the divine aspect. As I said, hardly anything is known about how Buddha, Christ, and other great prophets have done their sadhana. How much did they struggle? Did they not struggle? Otherwise, realization did not come to them on a platter. They had to struggle very hard. So he says, we also were not aware that these two things could coexist, because all the biographies which they had read, Swami Shardanji and others, they had read the biographies of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all Christ and all. They had made a comparative study, and they found that everything mentioned in the biography is all divine. There's hardly any human aspect. So he says, if we had not met Sri Ramakrishna, then we would not have understood how it was possible for such contrary aspects to exist in the same person. But because we have seen him, we are convinced that he was an incarnation, a God-man. His divine qualities and powers were fully manifested through the veil of human body and human nature. So as I said, the very word avatara means coming down from a higher plane to a lower plane. Because God knows that we cannot rise to a plane where he lives. So to bridge the gap, he has to come down. Avatarana. Tulsidas, of course, mentions in his beautiful biography of Ramcharitmanas, he mentions that out of unbounded grace, Rama himself came as a human being or acted as a human being to show us the way to the divine. So that is his grace, to voluntarily accept the human aspects so that we can derive some inspiration from their lives, that if a person with human qualities can transcend all those qualities and become divine, then we get some kind of hope. So that's why he says, there was a thin veil that when he assumed the human body and human nature, the divinity for the time being was hidden. In fact, Holy Mother Sharda Devi managed to hide more. At least Sri Ramakrishna's life, we could see some divine visions, divine experiences, different states of mind, whereas Holy Mother was absolutely ordinary. She had a very thick veil, as Sri Ramakrishna used to often say, that she has covered herself with a thick veil of Maya. And it is very difficult. People would, if you see Holy Mother's biography, it's apparently a very uneventful biography. A woman living in Jairambati and most of her life, and then Udbodhan, then moving around, cooking and cleaning dishes, cooking for so many people, looking after some mad people who were who in the household, living in a household, neither renouncing or going to a monastery or something, just absolutely living a humdrum life of the world, apparently, externally. But deep within, there is this divinity which was hidden. With all these things, she could repeat the name of the Lord for, they say, 100,000 times every day. So you see, this divine aspect is coexisting with the human aspect. But in Sri Ramakrishna, it was difficult because in Holy Mother, the human aspect was overwhelming. The divine aspect was totally hidden. That's why many people could not understand her. Even some of the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna had no idea who she was. It's only because when Swami Vivekananda scolded them and told them her real significance, the significance of Holy Mother Sri Sharda Devi, that they could see through this human covering. Otherwise, she was intensely human. In Sri Ramakrishna, at least, there was a balance. In the initial stages of his sadhana, the divine visions that he had, or maybe in a later period, that is Guru Bhav, when disciples started coming to him, they could see more of the divine aspects. But those who had seen him in this sadhaka, as a spiritual aspirant, they had seen the human side of Sri Ramakrishna. And some of them were like Hriday, his nephew, who used to always be with him and who did not even understand the significance of what his master was, his uncle was undergoing. Because his mind was not prepared to understand the divine. He could see only the human side, whereas the divine side was more manifest after the householder disciples and the would-be monastic disciples started coming. But it was Hriday and of course the Holy Mother for some time, whenever she was in Dakshineshwar, she could see the humans, though they could see the human side. At least the Holy Mother was never deluded, like Hriday and other people. But others just thought he was a priest, an ordinary priest with some special powers. That's why Mathur Babu and all were respecting him, and that's why they respected him, not knowing what kind of divinity he possessed. So he says, because we lived with him, we realized that he never feigned any of these aspects. So he didn't feign, it was real for him, the human aspects especially. He said, when he said, my throat is paining because of cancer, it really pained. It did give him pain. He was not acting or play acting. He showed, of course, he had the capacity to detach himself from the body, which yogis can do and which spiritual aspirants ought to do. That's a different issue. But when he's experienced oneness with his body, he suffered like any other patient. And that detracted many of the superficial devotees. You see, one of the reasons Swami Shardanji will say that he decided to filter out, he wanted some genuine people whom he could hand over his treasure, the spiritual treasures. People who had come to him for just because they had to solve some worldly problem of theirs, either they wanted money or they wanted something else. They were all filtered out. They said, oh, this person cannot even cure his throat disease. And how can he help us? So many of them left because they had come for something else. But those who were sincere, like Swami Shardanji and other disciples, they could see through this veil of the human covering that Sri Ramakrishna came with. Some of them could even penetrate Holy Mother's human covering, which was thicker than Sri Ramakrishna's. But he says he never feigned. Whatever they could see or whatever they could perceive in Sri Ramakrishna was intensely human. So he says he truly took on a human nature in order to do good to humanity, because he showed us the path leading from the human plane to the divine. But that was his purpose. If he himself doesn't assume a real human side, all these human aspects, if he did not manifest in his own life, then how can he benefit others who are struggling to manifest the divine? We are all intensely human. So we need some inspiration and some proof, some experiential proof that it is also possible to live in a human body, to suffer all the human sufferings, to suffer all the pains and sufferings that are natural to human beings who have got a body, and then show how to transcend it. Then alone the life of these incarnations have any meaning. So, because, and now he says, why they could see where others could not see. Because we observed him closely, we understood that the avatars of the past also had displayed such wonderful manifestations of both the divine and human aspects. So then they started searching. When our master shows these two aspects coexisting side by side, then what about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Then they go deeper into the biography and see some other sources where this human aspect of Chaitanya or Jesus, the sadhana part, how they struggled to become what they ultimately became. So we shall see the same truth, he says, if we reverently study the life story of any avatar. We will find that sometimes avatars live on the same plane with us and deal with the objects and persons of the world just as we do. But sometimes they travel on the highest spiritual plane and bring to us news of a realm of ideas and power that is unknown to us. This is what rishis do. So that is why in Hinduism and Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda very clearly says, why did he discard all academic learning? Why did he not go to school? Because in those days, it was thought, especially under the influence of Western philosophy, that academic intelligence and academic understanding of philosophy alone led to a philosophical approach to life and a philosophical experience that is promised in philosophy. A rustic man, a man who is uneducated, had no access to spirituality. That was the idea. Under the Western influence, people started criticizing everything and everyone in the rural areas, the uneducated people, as useless. So if you want to be considered as a cultured human being, you need a cultured education. You need to go to a university and all those things. So Swami Vivekananda says, after going through university education, I felt like a fool before my master, because his knowledge was natural, his knowledge was derived from nature, not copied from others, not second-hand knowledge. And just to demonstrate that, he decided not to go to school himself. And not only that, he said that spiritual experiences or spiritual progress has nothing to do with your academic skills or academic learning. They have no connection. All that is required is purity of mind. When I say purity of mind, it means living on a more subtle plane than what we did before. We are all gross human beings. Every day, nature reminds us that we are bodies, we have our bodily needs, we have so many things, things that we desire, things that we possess, things that we want to possess more. All these things remind us that we are the body. And there is another urge in us to tell us that we are not bodies, we are spirits. We are pure spirits. That's what Jesus reminded all his disciples, that one is One lives in the body, but one is essentially a spirit. So the more of this spirit or more of this subtle nature of ours manifests in a human being, he should be considered as more cultured or spiritually mature than a mere academic person who is attached to the gross things of the world. So he says, his master repeatedly showed experience that there is a power, a higher power, which can be attained in this life, in this very life. Not after you die and then because of your merits you go to some imaginary heaven which may not exist at all. Nobody promises that. Vedanta doesn't promise an imaginary heaven where you do good deeds, donate some money and then go to heaven, get some merit. That is not promised. While you are living, while you have this human aspect dominant in you, how do you transcend it? Or how do you struggle against it? At least try to struggle against the human nature and attain the divine in this very life. In Vedanta, that is known as Jivan Mukti. That means you don't dream of some realization which is promised to you on doomsday or maybe when the day of judgment comes, and you believe that a day will come. I just go on religiously practicing what my tradition tells me to do, follow all the rituals, do all the pujas, go to all the churches, temples, mosques, and one day God, in the day of judgment, he will come and lift me up and either take me to heaven or if I've done bad things, send me to hell. Those primitive ideas do not exist in Vedanta. This hell or heaven that we see is created by us in this very life. If the divine consciousness or the divine aspect or the spiritual aspect predominates, we are spiritual. Otherwise, we are going towards... So anything that takes you towards the subtle, that means one is more pure. The definition of purity is not just following some moral principles. Purity or impurity is how much of the spirit you manifest in your life. If you manifest more of the spirit and less of matter, then you are spiritual. If you manifest more of matter, matter still pulls you down. All the matter doesn't just mean material things, mind you. Even the mind can be totally material. If a mind is tamasic, or mind is full of depression and other things, it is because the mind has become very, very gross. If it is a subtle light mind, if it is a happy mind, if it's a joyful mind, then it is a subtle mind. So it's not only in the body, but also in the mind, there are levels of grossness or subtlety, which we can see in the lives of these prophets. And for that he showed. He used to, when the doctor came, Mahendralal Sarkar came to treat him, he used to say, I'm not able to eat anything. I have so much of pain. And then at the very next moment, he could transcend that and allow him to do whatever treatment he wanted to do and withdraw the mind. He demonstrated that. And he was not play acting, not that he was not feeling the pain. 10 minutes before, when they used to normally come and examine his throat, there would be terrible pain. But then you tell the doctor, give me some time, let me withdraw the mind. So these were demonstrated day and night before these disciples. That is why Turyananda, once he tried to test him and one of his disciples, and Sri Ramakrishna said, see how mother is unkind to me. She doesn't even allow me to eat. Then Turyananda understood that. He said, whatever you may say, you at will you can... I see you as a picture of joy. A picture of joy is within you. Whenever you want, you can access it. I can see it. Then Sri Ramakrishna was very much pleased. He knew that this disciple has understood me. That doesn't mean that he didn't feel the pain. When he said he is feeling the pain, he really felt the pain. So this keen desire to disconnect the spirit from matter is nothing but sadhana. That is what Swami Shardanand is trying to explain. Before we even take to spiritual life, he says, before even we take Sri Ramakrishna or try to understand him either as an Ishta or an Avatara or even a great spiritual giant or spiritual person, we have to understand what sadhana is. That is what he is saying. Otherwise, he says, you cannot understand Sri Ramakrishna. You can't approach him with a very limited knowledge of the Ishta. If you have a limited knowledge, then no matter how much sadhana you do, it's not going to benefit. So with the knowledge of who our Ishta is, if we then that induces us, he says, creates an intense passion in our life to undertake sadhana. Because we see it demonstrated in their lives, that how with all the human imperfections, human sufferings, human tragedies which happen in their life, how could they overcome it and be at peace? That should be the motive power, not that his life never had problems. If there existed an incarnation, or if somebody has written a biography of their Ishta or incarnation, whose whole life was so smooth, it's all smooth smiling, there's no problem, everything is fine, he is always divine, then it is of no use to us. Because our lives are not like that. Our lives are full of suffering. So we need a person to show how to overcome this suffering while living in this world. Not that you undergo suffering, as some of the religions say, you will sacrifice yourself and then you will go to heaven. They promise so many things. Who has seen that heaven? Who knows where one will go? Vedanta doesn't say don't believe in all that stuff. If you want realization, it has to be it has to be experienced. At least some experience in this particular life, when we are still alive, when we are still struggling. That alone takes us forward. Not some imaginary promise by some XYZ person. So that's why he says, he decides, Swami Shardanji now says, how do you know that what these things, the things that we see in our incarnation, the human side and the divine side, they are true? How do I, because he is, as a lawyer, he's trying to, just as a lawyer would decide, all the aspects, he's trying to find out that if somebody raises a doubt, then how do I answer him? So he's imagining that some people may not believe what I say. They have their own preconceived notions about incarnations, about religion, about religious truths, and many things. So he's trying to analyze it. He says, avatars do not have the slightest trace of selfish desire. The question may arise, why are they doing this? What do they gain? Because our life is always based on what I gain. In a very crude language in India, they say "Faida culture." Faida means what is the benefit. If it doesn't give me anything, then I don't follow it. What does it mean to me? Every decision in our life, we ask this question. Most of us ask this question, that what does it mean to me? What will I get if I do this? If it doesn't give me anything, I don't want. So he's now trying to show that he has no selfish desire, otherwise he would not be our Ishta or an Avatara. They have no desire to enjoy sensory pleasures or things of the world here or hereafter, not even in heaven. They don't promise you any better life in heaven, nor any intention of enjoying infinite bliss by liberating themselves while disregarding the fate of others in the world. This is one step ahead of normal human beings. When we aspire for moksha, we aspire for the highest happiness. For an ordinary jiva, it is okay. But for incarnations, they don't even aspire for that. As long as they can help humanity, they don't even have the desire for their own mukti. As Swami Vivekananda himself said, I will give up 1,000 lives, even if I can, by that, if I can help one soul to attain liberation. So that is how Buddha also gave up several, in every of his previous lives, the 500 lives which they describe in his life. Each one of the life was for some sacrifice for the benefit of others. They never lived their lives with any slightest trace of selfish desire. Otherwise, we would not have worshipped these incarnations. Because they were unselfish, they had no axe to grind. Every one of us feels a reverence, natural reverence for them. So, because they even gave up their desire for moksha or anything, they willingly assumed suffering. The primary object of their spiritual quest is to investigate the unknown divine power that has helped them from their birth. This is a new thing which is telling. Then why do they act the way they do, these incarnations? That there is some divine power. They have been born with human parents, so they have the human aspect. But they themselves see that there are some divine aspects which they should investigate, and not only investigate, but see that it increases more and more so that it can benefit humanity. Now he says, does that power, that divine power which they have right from childhood, because we read the first part of this biography, where so many incidents of Sri Ramakrishna's childhood were explained by Swami Shardananji. So he is now trying to analyze that when he grew up and when he started doing sadhana himself, he was no longer a child, he was a young man. Does that power by which they experience this unique ecstasies and perceive divine forms in the realm of ideas to be as real as anything in the gross world truly exist? I mean, this is a very legitimate question. He said, if maybe it is a hallucination, what they saw in childhood, what they see even while doing sadhana, how do I know that it is not as certain for me or for all the people who observe them, as certain as the things of the world? So do they really exist? So this is a question which Swami Shardananji anticipates. Or is it mere fabrication of their own imaginations? Now this was a question, this was a doubt which was there in even Narendra's mind, Swami Vivekananda's mind. In the beginning, he refused to accept. He said that this man is full of hallucinations. He says he talks with the Divine Mother. I am not going to accept it. Maybe he has a deranged mind. That's what he says. Is it a fabrication of their own imaginations? By comparing their knowledge and experiences with those of ordinary people, they soon realize that others do not perceive the world as they do. Other people are almost completely without the ability to see the world from a higher plane of consciousness. Now, this is very important to understand, because one of our a famous book is there, Meditation and Spiritual Life. Swami Yatiswarananji used to speak of these planes of consciousness. So he says, what is real to us engages our whole attention. We think that only is true. He gives a simple example. Swami Vivekananda gives this example in Rajoga. He says, if you tell a child that running after toffees and toys is not good, you should have some higher tastes, he is not going to listen to you. The child wants his toffees, he wants his toys, because they are intensely real to him. He doesn't care what other great things or poetry or other things you like. He said, you may like your poetry, you may like, the grown-up people may like something else, but for the child, he is very happy to have his toys, to have his sweets. So the idea is that at different levels of consciousness, we hold certain things to be dear to us, to be absolutely true, absolutely relevant to us. So Swami Vivekananda in his London lecture, when he said, you people are speaking like these babies. If you ask a baby that you do this, then he'll say, will that give me toffees? Will that give me sweets? Because for him, toffees are everything, or chocolates are everything, or toys are everything. So whatever does not give him a toy, he is not interested in it. You may be interested in that, but for him it is irrelevant. So also for a worldly minded person, you talk of the spiritual experiences, spiritual practice. He said, what will it give me, a bigger house or a bigger car? If it doesn't, if your religion gives, I'm prepared to come. If by doing puja or something, if I get a bigger car or maybe a bigger house, if it somehow helps me in my mission, in my struggle to generate wealth or get all these things, I will follow, because his level of understanding, his consciousness is restricted to that plane. So Yatiswaran says, what is real for us, at that moment it engages our whole attention. Anything other than that is not relevant for us. So also he says, the difference between why all people could not understand Sri Ramakrishna. There's a beautiful Sanskrit verse, which those who do puja, they have to, in fact, it is very essential to do a lot of purificatory rites, even before one can do puja. So I was wondering why there are so many, almost half the puja is purification. Because there is a verse in the our scriptures that Devam Bhutva Devam Yajet. You cannot worship God if, in the true sense, you can worship as an ignorant person. That will give you limited result. But for real worship is trying to see the same spirit in yourself, trying to raise your consciousness at least temporarily to that level so that you can offer your worship. So he says ordinary people, because their thinking, their consciousness is limited to certain levels of existence, they cannot appreciate or understand. So the incarnation, what does he do? He comes down to your level. For example, when somebody came to Sri Ramakrishna because he lost his son, and he was weeping. In the initial stage, if you've seen, it is there in the Gospel and also the Great Master. Sri Ramakrishna also started weeping with him. And he felt so much of consolation because he saw, I lost my son, and why is this person weeping? So in the initial stages, he also wept. He also, not that he acted, he really felt, oh, this old man in this old age, he has lost his young son. How much suffering is there? So he really suffered. He took that human aspect for the time being. Then he thought, now I should help him to overcome that. What has happened has happened. How to deal with this problem? Then he slowly started singing a song, and you see that's a beautiful incident in the Gospel. So with that, this shows that even coming down to the human level, feeling the same pains and struggles that they feel, how to overcome them and how to raise the consciousness in those people is the hallmark of a Ishta or a great teacher. If the Ishta, the main purpose of meditating on the Ishta is to attain to the level of consciousness our Ishta lives in. If we are able to do it, then there is no problem, because there was Sri Ramakrishna did not have any problem, though he apparently had all the human problems that practically a human being could have. He had his own share of problems in the physical world, in the gross world. But at the same time, he showed us the way how to transcend them and not to be affected by them. So to raise oneself to that level, one has to meditate. That's the only reason why we have to understand the life of any person whom we want to consider as our role model. We have to understand in depth. Before we meditate, we have to know what level of consciousness Sri Ramakrishna lived in. What is the level of consciousness he lived in? And how could he raise his consciousness from the intensely human to the intensely divine? So, when avatar compare themselves with ordinary people, if somebody hypothetically compares themselves with Sri Ramakrishna, they realize that seemingly sweet yet fleeting sense objects cannot tempt them as they do others in this transient life. They are very particular because they know their priorities in life. The difference is this: we succumb to the pressure of the transient, the uncertain and transient world. As Sri Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Anityam Asukham Lokam. Because it is transient, it is sorrowful. I mean, it is full of sorrow. Asukham. Anityam, because it is. So these people, right from childhood, at least when they grow up, when they do sadhana, every moment they make the right choices, unlike us. They know what is transient. Okay, this is transient, I just give it up. They have no problems because their choice-making capacity, or viveka as it is known, is developed right from childhood. But then they have to make a choice. Not that the choice was made for them. Every time these two things come before them, they have to make the right choice. And in the process, what Swami Shardanji says, they help us to make those choices ourselves. Many times we make those choices, right choices. Many times we do not. And if we do not, we suffer. To show that they come, how can we make right choices in life? How can we live our life in such a way to keep the light of discrimination always bright? That's the whole purpose of Gayatri Mantra and the Japa that we do. There's no other meaning. The only meaning that the mantra or Gayatri has is, O Lord or O Son, please give me the light of knowledge, or see that I develop my buddhi so that I make right choices in life. Dhiyo yona prachodayat. So that is the essence of all other mantras also, because there is no other purpose. Mantra cannot give us anything else other than this, because it is meant for that. So just as if there is a matchbox, you can just get fire out of it. You can't get water. So also, the very purpose of all these spiritual practices, the end result at least, or even while the process is going on, is to make the right choice in life. So Swami Shardanji says, the sense objects or anything that is transient, that is there now, but it will not last long, that will not tempt them, or they'll say, oh, is it eternal? Oh, this does not have an eternal quality, so I don't want it. I have nothing to do with it. So they're very clear. Their choices are very clear. The priorities that is definitely observed. And it does not come in a day. If you see the lives of Sri Ramakrishna, for example, he used to go for hours together. He used to say, taka mati mati taka. He used to take the coin and convince his mind, not that he was not attracted towards money. He saw the whole world running after money. And Hriday was seeing him, this mad uncle of mine, is taking this coin and with some mud and throwing both into the river. He said, what kind of madness is this? And Sri Ramakrishna did not get this in one day. Though we would like to think that he never touched coins or he never had a greed for money. He had to go convince himself that just as this mud which is unreal or transient, this money is also unreal or transient. Transient means temporary. So to convince his mind, not only convince his mind, to, as Shardananji will explain, to make it a part of his own nervous system, nervous association of ideas. See, this word I had never read before, not even in the psychology books. What do you mean by nervous association of ideas? To explain why Sri Ramakrishna again and again went and said, taka mati mati taka, it's not as simple as that. We may say, we may read and we may understand, but do we really convince our nervous system that this is as intransient as the other, and the only eternal or permanent thing is the Lord? If that wisdom had come to us, then we don't need any sadhana. That's why he says, Sri Ramakrishna, these avatars see the world from both the human and divine. They don't suppress the human side. They also say we had our own temptations. There were people who are forcing us to make this choice or that choice. Everybody wanted to somehow drag Sri Ramakrishna to the world. You see, his relatives, they thought because he's always talking of spiritual truths, he's behaving in a very peculiar way. Let us make him worldly, let us marry him off. Of course, they married him, but that proved to be, it did not serve the purpose which his relatives would have intended. But anyway, they, right from beginning, they say, thick clouds of ignorance or despondency also attack them, like it does. And no matter how thick the clouds of ignorance or despondency come to their lives, they somehow manage to escape that, somehow manage to conquer that. And in this ever-changing world of Maya, or ever-changing world, a changing world which seems to slip out of our hand every time we try to grab it, it does not bind them. He says it cannot fully cover their minds. A cloud may come, but the cloud will go away. Their compassionate minds are therefore, now what will they do with that mind, that developed mind? They are solely absorbed in the question of how they can gain full control over that divine power. Because as Swami Sarvasthananda says, and he's writing this from his own experience, that he saw that this divine spark was now and then reminding. As you see, it was very natural with Naren also. Something which Sri Ramakrishna knew. He said, do you see dreams? He said, yes, I see dreams. And in that dream, he used to say that I used to have two visions always in front of me. One is that I would be a king and a very rich person. And other vision, simultaneously, you would get that I would be a mendicant, possessing nothing and just wandering around the world. So these two visions, even right from childhood, he would see. And then he says, as the dream progressed, slowly the dream in which he gained, he earned a lot of wealth, became a king, that would fade. And that of a monk would become predominant. So that, not that they don't, the clouds do come, but they don't cover their minds. That is what he is saying. And they are always keen or always eager to know how we can ascend to higher and higher stages of realization. As Sri Ramakrishna himself said, I am a glutton, not for food, but I am a glutton to know what all experiences, spiritual experiences are there. I want to see how Christians realize God. I want to see how Muslims realize God. I want to see how different sects within Hinduism want to realize God. It's a divine hunger, which Holy Mother said. Somebody asked Holy Mother, did Sri Ramakrishna practice all these different faiths because he wanted to bring a harmony? He said, no, that's not the case. He practiced this because he was not happy. If he had one spiritual experience, he would say, no, I would like to have that also. It's like a child saying, I want this sweet, I want that sweet, I want to get all possible sweets that are available. So he was like a spiritual glutton. So that's why he says they will never be at peace. Not like us, we are not at peace because there are so many things which we cannot fulfill. For them, they are not at peace because they say this another path or another realization which is unexplored. I want to enjoy how these people who belong to this tradition enjoy God. Why should I leave that? So that was the motive that pushed him forward. And he says, how can I gain control over the human side? Because you see, they not that when the human nature overpowers their personality, they feel suffocated. Definitely they feel suffocated. So they like us, we feel suffocated, we feel helpless how to come out of it. But they don't feel helpless because there's some divine vision since childhood which they had been granted and which does not allow them to succumb to this despondency. They will keep trying and trying higher and higher, trying to develop higher and higher consciousness, and not only with the selfish interest of realizing it themselves. That Swami Shardanji will discuss when he comes to the third part of the book, which is Guru Bhav Purvarda. What made him spread this first half of his life? He lived for almost 50 years, 49 years and a few months. But first 25 years was spent in sadhana. You can roughly divide that. And the next 25 or even less was spent in distributing what he had gained through his austerities, through all his experience. He didn't want to die before sharing all this experience. He wanted some people to take, learn from him, and not only that, pass over this spiritual gift as a father would, a son would inherit his father's wealth. So he says they teach this technique, not that they can get peace. They learn this technique, not that they can get, only they can get peace, but they can pass on this technique to others who will in turn get peace. For this reason, he says, on one side there is this terrible struggle of sadhana, another side there is intense compassion. If a person with hard work gathers a lot of money, he would not like to share it with others. He will say, maybe he's justified in saying that from the worldly point of view, that this is my hard-earned money, I don't want to share it with others. But Sri Ramakrishna was not like that. Because he acquired these spiritual treasures, only because their only motive is to share it with others before they die. They want to go, when he gave everything to Naren, he said, today I have become a fakir. What did he mean? He said, I have given all the wealth, all the fruits of spiritual sadhana I did to you, and now I don't need it. I've given everything that I earned. It is for your sake that I earned. So, Avtara's compassion, that we'll discuss in the next class. Are there any questions? Yeah, so it has been a very tiring day.
Yeah.
You have a question? No questions. Did you hear the talk? No. So if there are no questions, shall we conclude today? Just see the chat.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll conclude. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Pranamastu.